It's 11:59 at Gun Owners Radio, and this is the Penn Patriot, music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, and another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind American lines, this is your song.
Gun Owners Radio, we make activism easy. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Big month. This is the month of May, 10K in May. Thank you so much to everybody. We are now over 10,000 subscribers. Couldn't have done it without you. Let your friends know. Let's get to 100,000 next. So thank you for coming, and you're going to love Gun Owners Radio today.
Check it out. We have another jam-packed episode for you. Attorney Alan Beck talks about how the courts got it wrong in Florida. Our gun shows in California gone forever. And we are going to talk about who and what the electorate really is here in California. Election season is right around the corner, plus a whole lot more.
There you go. Okay, guys, get something special for you, especially if you're in the San Diego area. You know, Mother's Day is coming up, guys. And if you're looking for a way to show your mother just how much you love her and support the Second Amendment community at the same time, there's somebody who's been absolutely wonderful to us. Go to Christine'sFloralDesigns.com, Christine'sFloralDesigns.com. She's done flowers for us in the past. She's absolutely wonderful. She's been doing flowers for San Diego County Gun Owners events for years, and she's a proud supporter of our cause. So let's help her out and do something nice for Mom. She delivers in Santee and handles events all over the county. Use code SDCGOA. That'll get you 5% off. Vote with your dollars and support the business that supports the Second Amendment and make Mom happy. So that's good. That's nice, right? Christine's wonderful.
Yeah, if you've ever gone to a gun prom, you saw her work.
Yeah, well, you know, we just had comedy night this last week, Second Amendment comedy night, which was really, really well done, and everybody had a good time. And I got to tell you, there were 4 comedians. They were hilarious. Yeah. It was really, really funny. And Christine, her flowers were there. She and her husband were both there enjoying the evening, and she provided flowers. But it went really well. You weren't able to make it.
I wasn't able to make it. No, I was pretty bummed.
It went really well. There was a cocktail. I think we're going to do it again. The venue was cool. It's a private venue, so it was just San Diego County Gun Owners folks, you know, Gun Owners Radio folks. A lot of mixing and mingling, and it was funny. The bartender, super nice lady, and we were talking prior, and she said, well, what do you guys do? And I told her, you know, San Diego County Gun Owners. She goes, I'm a gun owner.
Oh, good.
And I was like, oh, really? You know, she said,
Did she whisper it like that?
Yeah, kind of, you know, even though like we were the only 2 people in the room, you know, she was still like,
and she was in good company.
Yeah.
Right? That shows you that level of discomfort that's there, right?
I said, well, what was the catalyst? She said, well, you know, I grew up with guns, but my boyfriend got me into it. And I was like, oh, I said, you know, a lot of times these days it's more and more often the other way around.
Right.
You know, it's the, you know, some guy and girl start dating and she's into guns and he starts going, oh, geez, I better pick up my game here.
There you go.
So it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So thank you, everybody who attended. Like I said, I think we're going to do it again. It was a lot of fun. It went really smoothly, and it was just a good night of you know, meeting people and then having some laughs.
Perfect.
So what do we got next?
All right, now it's time for our Gun Truth of the Week.
Gun Truth of the Week. Okay, this is our Gun Truth of the Week this week. In May of 2019, Guns and Crime Prevention reported that a comparison between the United Kingdom and the United States shows that gun ownership is particularly good at preventing sexual assault. During the same time period that the UK ended handgun ownership essentially for everybody, the US saw a steady increase in handgun ownership, especially among women. Both countries also saw big differences in the rate of sexual assaults, with incidences in the United States dropping dramatically and incidents of sexual assault in the UK skyrocketing. And that is your Gun Truth of the Week. I don't think that's surprising.
Not at all.
I don't think anybody should be surprised by that. I think that if you have a country full of women who can defend themselves, you shouldn't be surprised that incidences of sexual assault will drop.
Absolutely. as it should.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think we're, it just makes sense. I've said it over and over again. You know, the anti-gun crowd has their propaganda and they talk about their statistics and they distort the whatever, right? I mean, this political messaging and their bumper stickers or whatever.
Right.
But the reality is when somebody wants to protect themselves, particularly when a woman wants to, I think women, I think women think about self-defense a lot differently than men. I think it's a lot more of a dire issue.
Right. You know, there's a lot of factors that play into that. One is our lack of ability to defend ourselves when it comes to just simple strength. We can have the desire. We can even have some skills, but we can't match the strength of a man most of the time.
And I think when a woman gets attacked, the type of attack is
Different.
is so horrifically different.
Right. Man and man tends to be.
Yeah, I'll get a black eye.
Or stuff.
Yeah.
Or ego.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Women,
it's way worse. It's way worse. The type of attack that they're thinking about having to defend from. You know, like I said, if I get attacked, you know, I'll end up with a black eye or maybe a stolen wallet. You know, if a woman gets attacked, it's devastatingly life altering. So they understand, and where I'm going with this is they understand that a firearm is the most effective self-defense tool ever invented. And that fact cuts through all the rhetoric, cuts through all the political rhetoric. So, again, not surprised. Not surprised. Take a lesson, UK. Or don't. I don't care. You guys, you know. But in the United States, we're going to continue to defend and let women be empowered by the firearms they own. So, okay, let's go into Q&A. Q&A. You have cues. You send them to me. I do my very best to answer them. Alicia, I'm going to get your help on this one because when we originally talked about this off air, I didn't fully understand the question. I got it wrong, and you helped correct me. So today's Q&A, here's the cue. A person was trying to buy ammo, and their background check failed because their address is wrong in the system. Where do they go to fix it? Now, this is California specific. A few years ago, California started doing essentially it's a background check. It's very much the same steps to buy a firearm. You now have to go through essentially the same steps to purchase ammo, and that includes a background check. Now, there's no wait period, but there is a background check, and you have to pay a fee or whatever.
Yeah, it's like a buck.
And California, in all their infinite wisdom, they didn't just connect it up to the same database. It's a whole new database, and we're finding out that this database is messy and inaccurate, and nobody cares about it, and it sits in the corner and waits to be beaten for the. I mean, it's horrible. It's a really horrible database, and I don't think that that's an accident. I think they purposely don't care about this database. So what if people can't buy ammo?
Right.
So, okay, so if you go in and you can't buy ammo because if you go in, your name's John Smith, and they go, okay, you're John Smith from 555 Main Street. That's what it says on your ID. But in the system, you're John Smith from 123 Walnut Street. Guess what? You don't get to buy ammo.
Correct.
So, right? I'm describing the situation?
Yeah, so I think that part of the confusion and what I think a lot of people don't get is they use the term background check in relation to ammo. It's actually technically not a background check in the spirit of what we normally think of as a background check. What they are doing is when you want to purchase ammo, what they do is they run the information that gets collected by the salesperson that gets run through a database, and it gets kicked back with either an approval, a denial, or a delay. And what that's doing is it's not a true background check. What they are doing is they're taking the data that was input and they're checking it against the database of people who've drossed a firearm in the state of California in the last, I would estimate to be about the last 8 years or so was when this started. If you've purchased and drossed a gun, you'll be in that database. So when they run your background check, it's just a computer system. It's not a person. So when they run your check, what's put in, they then check it against what's in existence on file. If it matches, you clear. If it doesn't match, like you said, you've moved or something like that, or in my case, I have had a firearm that was drossed and my name was misspelled. Things like that happen. And in that case, the background check for ammo will not pass because it doesn't match the database that it's checking to look for.
Gotcha.
UN. So
So how do you fix that?
so it kind of depends on what's wrong.
Okay.
If it's a name misspelling, you need for a couple different reasons. You need to go back to the original shop, the FFL that drossed it, and you need them to fix it.
Okay.
So, because what happens is if you have a firearms roast and the name is not properly misspelled it, you didn't catch it. You know, when you roast a gun, they ask you to verify the info. Check it. Take a minute and look at it. Don't make the, in my case, for example, I was just moving fast. I trusted the salesperson because I knew him. I didn't look as close as I should. I take the blame for that when my firearm was roasted improperly. But you need to go back to the shop that drossed it. A couple different issues. If you get into an issue with this gun, technically that firearm is not really registered to you if your name is misspelled on the dross.
Which
Which could be a potentially legal problem.
in California especially.
Correct.
I mean, California is so extreme when it comes to the penalties on
Correct.
any kind of gun violation. You don't want to run afoul. So if
Correct.
you do not want to be caught with an unregistered firearm, even if it was simply a mistake from the
error.
firearm
Correct.
shop. Yep.
Correct. So if it's a name issue, you need to go back to the original FFL. They need to fix it.
Okay.
They may not like it. They might try to fight you and say that they can't. They can and they have to. You need them to fix it. Don't let them try to tell you they can't.
So one way to fix it, go back to the
shop.
shop,
They have to
especially
rerun it.
if it has to do with names. What's
Correct.
number two? What's number two way?
So if you for names, that is the only way.
That's the only way.
So the only way I'm aware of, I should put that out there. If it's an issue with an address, you can go into a database called CFARS, California Firearms. Oh, I forget what the A stands for.
California. It's the California DOJ's website.
Correct.
And the system that they set up is called CFARS. CFARS. California Firearms something.
Correct.
Registration system. Doesn't matter what it stands for. Just go to California DOJ's website and look for CFARS. And what do you do with CFARS?
So it's cfars.doj.ca.gov.
Okay.
That is essentially a portal between you and the DOJ, and you have the ability to update the registration of your firearm. So if you move or your address was done improperly, you have the ability to fix that.
Gotcha.
And then it gets corrected. Now, when you report that change to the state, it takes time for them to fix it, and you don't have that corrected and fixed, and the AMA background check will not clear until you get an acknowledgement back from the DOJ that we fixed it, the update is complete.
Okay.
Okay. I will say, however, that if you are doing an AMA background check, shops are allowed to take a verbal correction to your address. So if you have moved or the address was improper while you're waiting for that to be fixed, which you should and need to fix it, you can go to that shop and say, hey, I know that my ID says 123 Main Street, but I've moved and I'm still waiting for the DOJ. You can give a verbal correction. My address that my firearm is registered to, because the address they run it needs to match what was on the dross. So you can verbally correct it to say, I know my ID says 123 Main Street, but when I bought this gun, I lived at 542 Maple Street, right? And then they can take a verbal correction. There are some shops that may have a shop policy to where they don't want their employees to do that, but the DOJ does allow it.
Okay.
So that
So
is an option.
if they do it, they do it. If the shop doesn't
Correct.
want to do it, you got just please be
Go to the next one.
understanding. Yeah, go to the next one.
Right.
Be understanding that shops are under a lot of pressure, a lot of legal pressure. So sometimes they make they make their own policies so that they definitely stay on the right side of the law, so they can stay open. They want to be able to stay open.
Right.
And then what's the most fun way to update your address?
Oh, you get to buy another gun.
There you go. Or you can just buy another gun and say, hey, here's my new address. Here's everything you need to know about me that's current. And
Correct.
you get to walk away with a gun. That option comes with
I don't see a downside.
with a free gun that you pay for.
And you can also you can also re-register a firearm that's already registered to you, that if you bought it before the 8-ish or so years that this system's been in place, you can re-register through CFARS a gun that you already own legally.
Okay.
And that puts you in the database as well.
We should seriously start advertising that, hey, if you need to update your address with the California DOJ, it's $1,000 fee,
And you get a free
but
gun.
it comes with a free gun.
I like
Right?
I like it.
Oh, glass is
There you
half
go.
full. So there you go. If it's a name issue, if they've got your name incorrect on the system, you got to go back to the FFL that
Have them
screwed it up
fix it.
and have them fix it. If it's just an address situation, then you can go to CFARS through California DOJ and you can fix it there, or you can purchase a new gun and give all your information that way.
And CFAR is also, too, if you are doing a familial transfer, if you've ever done a familial transfer and you did it online, you would have done that through CFAR. So you may already have an account if you've done that.
There you go. Awesome. So I did something interesting on Thursday that I wanted to tell you about. Thursday night, I went up to, I was invited to South Bay, LA, which is, it was Redondo Beach, and the NRA Members Council had their meeting. And they invited me to come talk about San Diego County gun owners and gun owners radio.
Oh.
It was very cool. Dave, who works for the NRA, Dave Holbrook, was there, and it was a room full of patriotic Second Amendment, great, fantastic people. I met everybody there, I think, and it was really, really great. Jim runs it. He was absolutely a wonderful host. They actually broadcast it over, I think, Zoom, and everybody was so fired up. It really, really, truly feels like, first off, I am elated with NRA 2.0.
Oh, good.
Yeah, like the changes. I don't think we need to avoid talking about the fact that the NRA had a rough, I'm going to say 5 years.
It was no secret.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you remember, I remember having folks on the show just to talk about the criticism of the NRA, and my position at the time, early on in this thing, is, hey, what are you gaining by criticizing the NRA? I mean, I was, pretty solidly defending the NRA at first, and then when things started getting really bad, I just stopped talking about it and said, you know what, we need to focus on us. We need to focus on our goals and the things that we're doing. But now, the new board, there are a lot of new board members. We endorsed a bunch of board members this last time around. We helped get a bunch of them elected. They did the lion's share of the work. We just did what we could by making folks aware. Doug Hamlin, who is the new head honcho at NRA, is fantastic. The new employees that I'm working with, Dave, and he's not that new, but I'm working with Dave Holbrook and Dan Reed up in Sacramento and Keeley up in Sacramento. I mean, it's wonderful. I'm really excited. It's feeling like something's happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, that when we had Mr. Holbrook
Dave?
on,
Yeah.
he was great on air. I was right. It sounded very promising, but I still, at that point, was like, you know what? I'm very guarded. I want to believe it. It sounds good, but I need to see it. So that's really good to hear.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I still say, remain skeptical, but remain skeptical of everybody, and but do your part. Don't. One of the themes of the talk was remove the excuses. Forget about the excuses. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody talk about something, an accomplishment or something that they've done, some way that they've been successful. And I find myself internally, going, well, that person had this advantage or that advantage, or they're taller than I am or better looking or thinner or whatever. You know what I mean? Some excuse that made me feel better about not doing something, about not even trying. And I think we do that a lot. I think I don't think that that's unique to me. And I really wanted to emphasize that, hey, every one of these accomplishments out there, whether it's in a courtroom or it's an activism thing, whatever it was done by a normal, everyday person. You know what I mean? There wasn't some special circumstance that only they could do. It's just the person who accomplished it stepped up and said, hey, I'm going to make this happen. And they worked hard and they made it happen. So that was kind of a theme, and it feels like there's a lot of people that are stepping up and making things happen. And don't let past criticisms or your own skepticism stop you from doing what needs to get done, especially when it comes to Second Amendment, especially in the state of California. It definitely feels like there's something happening. Good. Something good. So thank you so much, NRA Members Council, for having me. That's where I started my journey in activism back in 2008. I think it was January 2008. I went to my first NRA Members Council meeting here in San Diego. And February 2008, they elected me vice president after being there a whole month. And boom, I was off and running. And the late, great Dexter Haight was the president. He was such a good man, such a good leader. And that's what got me started. So, check out San Diego County Gun Owners, check out Inland Empire Gun Owners, check out Orange County Gun Owners, check out NRA, check out their members' councils. Doesn't matter where you do your activism, go do some Second Amendment activism, join a group and get her done. So there you go. Wanted to tell you about that. And then it was a nice drive up to LA. If you got to go visit a place, man, Redondo Beach, not bad. So, all right, let's do our lawsuits and legal updates. We have a couple that are very interesting this week.
All right, so this segment is our legal and legislative segment where we tell you what you need to know from the courts and the legislators. Remember, we are not lawyers and nothing we say is to be taken as legal advice. Our sponsor, John Dillon, is a lawyer who has been helping people to fight those GVROs, gun violence restraining orders, and more. If you know somebody that's had their self-defense rights taken away without due process, give John a call. His website is dillonlawgp.com, and his phone number is 760-642-7150.
Okay, never again will we ever see a gun show in California ever again, or are they completely gone for forever? Well, there was a major setback. Unfortunately, in the courtroom, there was a major setback. So what happened? Let's talk about the history a little bit. First off, gun shows, the most appropriate place for them to take place is on fairgrounds. Fairgrounds are owned and run by the state of California. So, and that just makes the most amount of sense. They have the most room for a gun show. They have the most parking. There are very few, if any, private venues that can handle a gun show the way a fairgrounds can handle a gun show. And oh, by the way, that's the whole purpose of a fairgrounds. It's a regional asset. It's something that they can have all kinds of different shows, all kinds of different assemblies there. That's exactly what it's for. It's owned by the taxpayer. So for years, for decades, it was a perfect marriage. They would have gun shows. People would show up. There was fellowship. It was First Amendment. It was Second Amendment. It was wonderful. The safety record was impeccable. Studies actually show that gun shows bring down crime. They don't increase crime. And of course, at a gun show, you have to comply with all state laws, all federal laws. This myth of a gun show loophole didn't exist. So what happened? Well, a bunch of anti-gun politicians decided that they were going to outlaw gun shows on state property. And they, got a bunch of activists to show up and tell a bunch of lies, frankly. To, talk about gun shows as if they were dangerous or as if there was a ton of illegal activity. And it passed. Just like all these anti-gun laws in California, it passed, unfortunately. So what happened? Well, they sued B&L Productions, which is Crossroads of the West. Their attorneys sued. Unfortunately, lost, and they appealed and appealed and appealed. Finally, it was ready for the Supreme Court to take a look. Well, we found out last week that the Supreme Court of the United States decided to not take the case. They decided to not take the case, which means that the last ruling stands. The last ruling was that the state could not allow gun shows on state property if they so choose. Now, we've had gun shows that were on private property, private land. It's very difficult. These private venues, it's much, much, much more difficult to have them on private property than it is on these public venues, because for all the reasons, all the reasons I stated, the size, the parking, the accommodations, and the price, frankly. The fairgrounds are supported by your tax dollar, and the private venues are not. So there's an unfair advantage there, right? But it benefited gun owners. We're paying our taxes so that we could have things like gun shows on these fairgrounds. Now, it doesn't stop Del Mar. They said, well, gee, the gun shows are dangerous and we shouldn't be promoting this type of activity and behavior, and think of the children and think of the children and think of the children. It doesn't stop Del Mar from having, these drunken, fests and, music performances that promote violence and have actually had shootings They still have those at their venue, but they decided that no matter how safe and a gun show is, and no matter how much gun safety they teach, and no matter how much training that goes on there, no matter how impeccable their safety record is at a gun show, they're still going to outlaw them because they're a bunch of hypocrites, and that's horrible. So what I wanted to emphasize, so as of right now, none of these venues that are owned by the state can have gun shows. The law stands. The injunction that was on it is done. So Del Mar, Orange County, all these different places where they were using state-funded venues, they no longer can have them there. And I wanted to talk about, like, well, now what? Is it over? The Supreme Court refused to take it, so now what? And what does that mean? It means, can we get this changed? Yeah, we can get it changed, but it's a long road. It would require us getting a majority in the Assembly, getting a majority in the state Senate, and then getting a governor that would actually sign it into law. Because it was a law passed by an Assembly member, then we'd have to actually have it undone by the legislature. And when I say majority, I'm talking about a majority of people that are reasonable and rational when it comes to gun rights. I'm not necessarily talking about a majority Republican or majority Democrat. I'm talking about people that can put their emotions aside, put their political bias aside, decide that they don't want to abuse their power, and they don't want to take things away from Californians, that they want to do what government's supposed to do, which is protect their ability to assemble, protect their ability to keep and bear arms. And we could get that undone. But the other point I really wanted to make is I think a lot of people just think that, hey, all this is going to get solved in the courts. And it's just not. There are, frankly, a lot of laws that won't be found unconstitutional in a courtroom that will limit your Second Amendment freedoms. Does that mean they're not unconstitutional? They probably are. You and I probably agree that all these laws are unconstitutional when it comes to limiting your ability to keep and bear arms. But listen to what I said. What I said was there are going to be a number of laws that limit your ability to keep and bear arms that won't be found unconstitutional by the courts. They should be, but I'm saying they won't be. It's not the only solution, and frankly, it's the solution that we have the least amount of control over. Unless you're the attorney who's filing the case or you're a plaintiff, the only thing really left for you to do is write a check, which you should do. All these groups that are filing lawsuits and supporting these cases, they absolutely are necessary, and we need to support them with our dollar. But then after you write that check, there's if you take a day and write a check and put a stamp on it and send it into a group or whatever, okay, well, there's 364 other days of the year where there's a lot of activism that needs to happen. And the reality is these laws wouldn't have passed had we gotten the right person elected in the first place. The person who wrote the assembly bill that banned gun shows specifically from the property in Del Mar is currently the mayor of San Diego. It's Todd Gloria. And by the way, on his social media, he was bragging about this. This was an accomplishment. Hey, guys, remember how I infringed on your First Amendment rights and I'm infringing on your Second Amendment rights, and I demonized you for being a gun owner and said that you're a problem and that you're dangerous? Remember when I did that? Well, the Supreme Court agrees with me now. Which isn't quite accurate, by the way. They just refuse to hear the case. But all these folks start out on a local border council somewhere, and they can be stopped before this happens, or we can elect people to replace the people who and undo these problems. That's a very real possibility. In fact, that's exactly how America is supposed to work. The courts are supposed to be a very last line of defense in extreme situations where there is a true and sincere disagreement. So I'm encouraging you, get involved. Get involved with us. Get involved with another Second Amendment group. Doesn't matter. Just get involved. There's a lot of strength with getting involved with a group. If you're just an individual and you're trying to talk to folks, frankly, elected officials just don't have enough time to listen to each and every individual in their district. So the more that they can talk to a group, and be more efficient, and know that, hey, you represent 1,000 people, you represent 10,000 people, whatever it is, the more effective you can be. So, write the emails, do the Facebook posts, make the phone calls, whatever. But just know that the most effective thing you can do is join a group and raise people and money. Organize people to get involved and raise money so that we can get all the things done that we need to get done. So I wanted to bring that up. It's unfortunate. We're still looking at gun shows. We had a gun show in Escondido not too long ago. We've had talks about having it again. So I don't think it's the end of gun shows, but the reality is that, not only is the fairgrounds, being withheld from you as a Californian, but it's also their opportunity, like Todd Gloria is using it for, to paint you as a horrible, evil, problem. And I think that is probably, if not where, it's just as bad as the reality of not being able to use the fairgrounds, is them using it as a PR move. So I wanted to tell you about that unfortunate case. And we don't know why. We don't know why the Supreme Court didn't take it. I got to tell you, the folks on the Supreme Court, the folks that work for the Supreme Court justices, are extremely intelligent people. And there are reasons, I should say, that they didn't take this case that we can't even think of. They might be looking at this case from a whole different angle. It may impact something that we never even would have imagined. Or maybe they just didn't want to take the case. We don't know. But the reality is they don't take thousands of cases every single year, which is another reason we can't just rely on court cases. So that's unfortunate. What do you think about that, Alicia?
It's unfortunate, but to be honest, I'm not overly surprised.
Really? Why do you say that? What doesn't surprise you about it?
Lately, lately the Supreme Court's been generally kind of kicking back a lot of cases back to the district and lower courts and asking them to review. They're not. It doesn't seem like they're really going hands on and seeing a lot of these firearms cases, or at least not that I'm seeing, unless you know something different.
No, I mean,
it seems like they're pushing them back.
They don't. I think that, I think that you're absolutely right. It's totally accurate. I've heard a lot of people complain about it. I think, though, that we're looking at it from one angle, like that's what's important to us is this Second Amendment stuff. Right. It needs to get solved. But the reality is, like I said, there are thousands of cases that they don't take.
Right.
And between, let's see, Heller was 2008. And before that, there was a Miller case, not the assault weapons ban case, but there was another Miller case in the 30s, the late 30s. So, what is that, 70, 80 years or whatever? Mm-hmm. For 80 years, they didn't take any Second Amendment cases.
Right, right.
So if you look at it historically and if you compare it to other cases, it's kind of surprising that they've taken so many Second Amendment cases in the last 15, 16, 17 years, whatever it is. I wish they'd take them all. But
right.
to be realistic, the reality of this situation is it's the Supreme Court. Everybody wants them to take their case, and they have to pick or choose. But like I said, I don't know. Maybe they looked at this case and said, "Hey, there are some personal property issues, or some business issues that would be impacted by this that have nothing to do with the Second Amendment." And we can't take this particular case, even if we want to make this point, because it'll impact other things. I don't know. I'm totally making this up and speculating. But what I'm saying is there's an entire staff of extremely intelligent people who look at these things from all kinds of different angles and strategize and try to figure out, hey, is this the right case? Yes, the majority of the Supreme Court thinks that the state's out of line. But if we take this case and rule on it, it could backfire in these 5 different ways. It have nothing to do with the Second Amendment. It's a very distinct possibility. Or they just don't have enough time.
Could be.
They just got to pick and choose. But I agree. I wish they would. I wish they'd take more cases. But, yeah. So, okay. Let's see. Let's talk about one more thing. So, Adam Schiff is one of the U.S. senators from the state of California. Known anti-gunner. extremely anti-gun. He's been anti-gun, since the dawn of time. The earth cooled and Adam Schiff became anti-gun. So he's decided that he is going to revive the gun ban that Feinstein wanted, that basically happened in the early 90s. They call it an assault weapons ban. But Alicia, what's another word for assault weapon?
Another word. I don't like the question.
Yeah. Another word for assault weapon is gun. It is a gun ban.
I will tell you. I mean, I don't know. I think I can assault you with this.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
let's
right.
be real.
But they've taken this term assault weapon because they can't say gun ban because that's unpopular. It's politically unpopular to say, hey, we want to do a gun ban. But what are they banning? They're banning guns. And specifically what they're banning is they're banning semi-automatic rifles. They're banning extremely commonly owned firearms. Firearms that people use for defense, they use for hunting, they use for sport, they use to collect whatever. But the reality is this is just a gun ban. The basic function of an assault weapon is no different than any other gun that you use for sporting, that you use for hunting, whatever. I mean, you pull the trigger, it strikes a primer, the primer sparks, it ignites some gunpowder, and then a projectile comes out of the end of a barrel. So if they can legally ban, if it's constitutional, if it's found constitutional to ban what they are calling an assault weapon, which is just a gun, then they're saying it's constitutional to ban every single firearm out there. Now, the opposite's also true. If it's unconstitutional to ban guns, to infringe on your right to keep, which means possess arms, then it's also unconstitutional to ban what they're considering assault weapons. So why is he doing this? Because I don't think this thing has a chance, of not this year. I don't think it has a chance of passing. You always have to take this stuff seriously, though. I mean, you never really truly know how someone's going to vote until they vote, as far as the senators and the House of Representatives. You never know what deal is being struck, to get funding in a district if you just vote for this, this gun ban. So you always have to take this stuff seriously. But I think the reality is, and both sides do this, every side does this, they're forcing a vote so that they can start a narrative. So there's going to be a midterm election in 2026, which means everybody in the House of Representatives has to run, and a lot of people in the state Senate, like a third, let's see. Yeah, I think like a third of the Senate, right, has to run. So what they're doing is they're creating a narrative. They're putting it out there that, hey, look, everybody that votes against this gun ban, doesn't care about your safety. They're an extremist, So they do this on a number of different issues, and it drums up support. It drums up a narrative. Hey, look, the candidate that we're trying to beat, they don't care about your kids. They don't care about your neighborhood. They don't care about your safety, and they do this on a number of issues to try to get people to take basically vote on a subject. Hey, where do they actually stand on this?
Trying to scare them to the polls.
Exactly. Well, and try to, nail down elected officials. Hey, look, you voted against this or you voted for this. Now, in a lot of states, Oklahoma and whatever, Texas, I would imagine, and a lot of states that are pro-Second Amendment, if you're voting against an assault weapon ban, a gun ban, that's actually going to help you.
Because you're giving people the ability to defend themselves to save those children.
Right. And your district, for the majority of your district, they don't like gun bans.
Right.
So they're really going after, a handful or maybe two handfuls of vulnerable folks in vulnerable seats where their district maybe is not in line. But anyway, that's what's happening. I didn't want to bring this up because I'm convinced it's going to pass. Now, we got to take it seriously. So, take it seriously. Talk about it. Talk about the fact that this is a civil right. Talk about the fact that this is little more than a gun ban. They keep saying, oh, we don't want to take your guns away from you. And then they support a gun ban. Talk about all that, take it seriously, but understand exactly what's happening. We're pulling back the curtain and showing you, hey, this is why they're doing that. I don't think Trump would ever sign this. I don't think it's definitely didn't have the votes to get through the House of Representatives, let alone the Senate. But this is why they do it. This is why Adam Schiff is doing it. And he's probably going to raise some money off it too. He'll send out an email saying, hey, check this out. Look what I did. Send in $10 and he'll raise some money off it. So
Both Todd Gloria and Adam Schiff are just spending a lot of time on X talking about the stuff. Adam's doing the same thing. He's posting lots of things on social media.
Todd Gloria. Well, I was wondering.
Adam Schiff as well.
Adam Schiff.
Yeah.
I was wondering. I mean, he's not filling in potholes. I know
No.
that. So I was wondering what Todd Gloria is doing, and Adam Schiff isn't doing anything to improve California. So I was wondering what those guys were doing. Anyway, that is your legislative and legal update. Okay, so we just told you about all the things that they're trying to do to you, or at least a couple of the things that they're trying to do to you and your gun rights. So now let's talk about what do you do? Like, how do you get involved? How do we counter this and make sure that it doesn't happen? Just getting mad, putting up a meme on Facebook or Instagram, that doesn't really do anything. So what do you do to actually get involved? Well, there are a lot of ways to get involved. There are a lot of things you can do to deploy and actually help. And honestly, it doesn't take that much time. Gun Owners Radio, groups like San Diego County Gun Owners, they do things to make it easy. And sometimes all we need you to do is show up. A couple hours a month, a half a day on a Saturday, something like that. It's not complicated. We make activism easy. So the deployment section of the show here is brought to you by Red, White, and Badass Brew Coffee, rwbbcoffee.com, rwbbcoffee.com. If you use code GOR, you'll get 15% off your order, and they'll deliver delicious, delicious coffee right to your house. So support them, help support the show, help support the Second Amendment community. First thing I want to tell you about, mark your calendars. We've talked about this before, but I want to make sure that you at least check it out and consider going. I'm going to be there. We're just definitely a group of San Diegans that are making the trek. The 2025 Gun Rights Policy Conference by Second Amendment Foundation, or SAF. Go to saf.org/GRPC. September 26th through September 28th, 2025. It's at the Salt Lake Marriott downtown at City Creek in Salt Lake City, Utah. So basically you show up Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They have a bunch of really cool speakers. They have networking events. The speakers are Second Amendment attorneys, activists, all kinds of cool information. But then it's also an opportunity for you to meet people that maybe you see online or you've read their articles. Maybe they're doing activism in a different part of the country and you want to learn all about it. This is a big deal, right? You got to take a few days off work. You got to fly in or drive into Salt Lake City. But I say it's definitely well worth it. So check it out. At least mark your calendar. Check out their website. See if it's something you want to do. The other thing we talk about a lot, of course, tabletops and shooting socials. Go to sdcgo.org/volunteer. We need people like you to help teach folks how to shoot. Actually give them a first-time shooting experience is really what it is.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. You don't have to be a certified instructor. We'll show you how to do it. We'll pair you up with somebody to teach, to give their first-time shooting experience. Or we definitely need people at tabletops. We have these tabletops that are informational where we hand out information. We sign up members, that sort of thing. We need you to sign up for that. So go to that. We're actually going to do a little website tour here in a minute, so I'll talk more about it. But get more involved. Do a little bit more than you did last year, this year. So our next guest is a Second Amendment attorney who's done a lot of really important work. He's right here in San Diego, and he's done some really, really interesting cases. And he just published a piece where he talks about how a court got it extremely wrong when it comes to the history of the Second Amendment. So I wanted to invite him on the show to have him talk you through it so that you can find his article and read it for yourself, because it was really well written. It was extremely well done. Alan Beck, how you doing, man?
I'm well, Mike. Thanks for on.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for all that you do, and thanks for joining us on the show today. So let's set it up. First off, what was the case that you were addressing? Tell everybody about the actual lawsuit that you were talking about.
In my article, I was discussing NRA v. Bondi.
Yep.
That's a case that challenges Florida's restrictions on sale of firearms to young adults.
Adults that are 18
18 through 20 year olds.
Yeah.
Correct.
And talk about
And
the case.
the 11th
What actually happened in the case? What was the finding in the case? What was the result of the case? Just give us like a 30-second rundown on the actual case and the plaintiff and what the decision was.
Well, what's important is the 11th Circuit found that 18 through 20 year olds don't have Second Amendment rights to purchase firearms. And it found that because during the colonial era, 18 through 20 year olds were considered minors. And that, according to the 11th Circuit, meant they didn't have a right to contract. And by not having a right to contract, the 11th Circuit said that they didn't, businesses wouldn't sell firearms to them. And based upon that, they effectively didn't have a Second Amendment right. So they upheld Florida's law.
Interesting. So Florida passed a law saying that if you're 18, 19, or 20 years old, you're not allowed. You're unable to purchase a firearm. That they're restricting the rights of 18, 19, and 20-year-old adults. And it went to court. The court upheld the law. The court said, yes, this law is constitutional. We're not going to strike this law down because the history shows that 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds at the time of the when the Constitution was written, 18, 19, and 20-year-olds weren't considered adults, and therefore you can restrict their rights. There were laws restricting 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. So therefore, we're going to uphold this law in Florida restricting their rights to buy firearms. Now, what's wrong with that historic or first off, did I get that right? Did I summarize it okay?
Well, to be clear, no one is arguing that 18, 19, and 20-year-olds did not have a legal right to own firearms during the colonial era. What the state of Florida argued is that, as a general matter, you did not have a right to contract for the sale of goods during the colonial era if you were under 21. That's very similar to how if you're 17 now, you don't have a right to contract for the sale of goods. And they derived from that you didn't have a right to purchase firearms specifically as someone under 20.
Interesting. So what's wrong with that historic text?
That is inaccurate because there was an exception for something considered a necessity. Necessities are things that you need to not just survive, but live your life. And, as I sort of fully summarize in the article, which was published by the Reload, that term included anything that you could have to basically to maintain your station in life. So that would include work tools, that would include uniforms, that in some cases would include a horse if you needed it to work. So that meant that a firearm would have been considered a necessity during the colonial era because every young adult needed a firearm for militia service.
Interesting.
The 11th Circuit found one specific case where a pistol was considered not a necessity, and based its entire ruling on that. However, that's an error. The 11th Circuit, how they got that wrong is that we didn't need pistols for militia service, right? We're dealing with a fact-based inquiry. Every single young adult needed a rifle or a shotgun, both to hunt and for militia duty. And the court very specifically, the colonial court held that a pistol is not a necessity, was specifically ruling on that young adult's circumstances. So it easily could have been a dueling pistol or something like that that you didn't need for your day-to-day. Whereas a rifle or a shotgun is something that all young adults needed. And pistols still would have been considered necessities for many young adults, because many adults, for example, ones that were serving the cavalry, would have needed that to maintain their station in life. So what the 11th Circuit did is it used one case about a very specific subset of firearm that you wouldn't use to hunt, you wouldn't use for military duty, and honed in on that, and didn't realize that the court was engaged in a very specific fact inquiry about that particular young adult's needs for that particular pistol, and then decided to derive a legal rule from it that it generalized to all firearms for all people. That was the major error.
And that level of trying to thread a needle or split a hair or whatever, that level of gymnastics to get to a conclusion is something you usually find in the 9th Circuit rather than the 11th. How do you explain? Like what happened there? What do you think? Why do you think things went wrong?
Well, I mean, I think just on a fundamental level, there's a lot of people that are uncomfortable with giving 18-year-olds a legal right to firearms. And, right, I mean, we live in a country where, you hear it on the news, even though you and I know mass shootings are very rare, they are sensationalized by the media. And, these judges, they know what their job is, but they also are human beings that are guided by, their politics, and they didn't want to take responsibility for being the one that put 18-year-olds putting firearms in 18-year-olds' hands. I mean, I think it's simple as that.
So what do you think the next likely step is with this case?
Well, that case being litigated by the NRA, and the NRA has already announced they'll be filing a petition for writ of certiorari with the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay, good.
So that should be the next level.
And if you had to look into your crystal ball, how do you think the justices on the Supreme Court will view this? Do you think they have a real good shot of getting this law overturned in the Supreme Court, or how do you feel about the Supreme Court's possible reaction?
I think so. I think that there is a circuit split on the issue of whether 18 through 20-year-olds have Second Amendment rights right now. With several appellate courts have ruled on this, and the courts are divided on whether 18 through 20-year-olds have Second Amendment rights. With the 10th Circuit and the 11th Circuit on one side, and the 5th Circuit, the 3rd Circuit, and the 8th Circuit on the other side. So the Supreme Court, typically they only will consider a case typically if there's a circuit split or there's a federal law that's been overturned. There's a couple other sort of unique other reasons, but those are the two main ones. And because the courts are divided on the proper protection 18 through 20-year-olds should get regarding Second Amendment rights, I think there's a very high chance that the Supreme Court will take it. And the interesting thing is the Florida Attorney General's office, there's been a change in attorney generals in the past, since this case was originally litigated. The Florida Attorney General has actually announced that they will not be defending this case at the U.S. Supreme Court.
That's interesting.
Because they believe the law is unconstitutional now. So it'll be interesting to see what the Supreme Court does if a cert petition, when the cert petition is filed. because effectively the Florida AG is going to say, please take it because we agree with the NRA. This law is unconstitutional. You should get this decision overturned. So if it does get granted, the Supreme Court is going to have to appoint someone to argue the other side.
Interesting. That's awesome. I appreciate you breaking the case down and talking about it. I think that your write-up was awesome. Where do people find your write-up so they can read it for themselves?
It was published by The Reload, which is a online firearms magazine I highly recommend. If you Google The Reload and maybe put in Alan Beck in addition to that, or Miners' Right to Contract, the article should come up. Or if you just simply go to the Reload website, just keep scrolling down. It was published a couple weeks ago, so eventually you're down to it. But I think the easiest way is just put in The Reload and then Google The Reload and Alan Beck.
Okay. And we'll have a link as well. And thank you to The Reload for publishing Alan's work. And Alan, thank you for everything that you've done, especially this write-up. I thought it was really, really well done. So thank you. Appreciate you coming on the show. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and keep up the fantastic work, Alan. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
See ya, man. Take care. That interview was brought to you by Cargo, cases and rugged gear outfitters in El Cajon. Go to cargostores.com, check them out. They have all kinds of cool products. Or if you're in town, go to 423 Broadway in El Cajon. Cargo has all kinds of cases, all kinds of cases to fit your needs. Gun cases, camera cases, whatever you need to carry and protect, they have a case for you. Plus, they'll customize it for you. But that's not all they do. They have all kinds of cool products. They have all kinds of camping and survival products. They have really, really cool things for guns or for non-gun owners alike. They're big supporters of the show. We're big fans of Cargo, so check them out. And if you use GOR, you'll get a discount. So when you're online, or if you go into the store and mention Gun Owners Radio or use the discount code GOR, you'll get a huge discount. Cargo will also add a desiccant pack to keep your firearms safe and dry and rust free. So other places sell you the rechargeable desiccant for $15, but you get it for free. Just mention Gun Owners Radio when you go in, or use the code GOR, and you'll get it for free. Remember, firearms only have a couple of enemies. One of them is politicians. The other one is rust. So this will help you get rid of that. Go support Cargo. Let them know how happy you are that they support Gun Owners Radio, and check them out. All right, now it's time for everybody's favorite segment, Stump My Nephew with Sam the Gunman. He's my nephew. If you send in a question, we'll ask Sam live on the air. It's got to be firearms related. And if we use it on the air, you'll get a free hat or shirt. If you stump my nephew, you'll get a hat or a shirt and a very special gift. So this segment is sponsored by Seal One, seal1.com. It's seal, the number one, then .com. Cleaning your gun shouldn't take forever, and with Seal One, you can make it faster and easier than ever, so that you can spend more time on the range, enjoying life, whatever you'd like to do. And now it's even easier. Seal One has a new product. It's their aerosol can, so it's all the same cleaning and lubricating power of Seal One, but in an aerosol can. And it's not just limited to guns. You can actually use it for any squeak or rust or whatever you got going on around your house. Anywhere that you'd normally maybe use WD-40, now you can use Seal One. You can support Seal One because they support you and the Second Amendment. So one and done with Seal One. Okay, Sam, I think we got an interesting question for you this week. I actually really like this question. Did you read it, Alicia?
I sure will.
Okay, go for it.
Hey, Sam.
All right.
Hey, so here's your question. Garvin from Encinitas asks, what is the difference about the action in a Winchester Model 70 and a Winchester 70 Classic?
Garvin from Encinitas, thanks very much for writing in. What were you going to say, Michael?
I was going to say, you hear that a lot. You hear that a lot about the Winchesters, the pre-64 Winchesters being better, than the post-64. And then not too long ago, they came out with these Winchester 70 classics, or some of the other lines are classics. And no one really nails down, well, what exactly happened in 1964 that, made them different. So this guy's asking, hey, what's the difference between a pre-64 Winchester Model 70 and a post-64 Winchester Model 70? So go for it. What do you got?
Oh, well, what happened in 1964? President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act into place. No, but the full disclosure, I had not heard the Winchester Model 70 Classic before, but it sounds, based on the name, like it's a return to the mechanical basis of the pre-64 Model 70s. And you do hear that a lot, that distinction made between pre-64, post-64 Winchester Model 70s. Now, I'm a little bit out of my depth on this one, but if I remember correctly, the main difference between the pre-64 and post-64 Model 70s is in the feed system, and consequently the extractor. Pre-64 Model 70s, as far as I'm aware, again, use a controlled feed system, sort of like a Mauser, where as soon as the top round in the internal box magazine pops up into the feedway and you push the bolt forward all the way to the time that the spent casing from that round is extracted and ejected from the gun, that rim is being held in place, or I should say the extractor groove is being positively held in place by the extractor, hence control feed. Push feed is a little bit simpler to implement. Push feed is what you'll see in an AR-15, for example. If you can imagine an AR-15, AR-10 type bolt, the top round in the magazine is pushed into the chamber by the bolt, and only when the bolt goes into battery with the round in the chamber does the extractor claw snap over into the extractor groove on the rear portion of the case. Again, push feed is a little bit simpler to implement, but controlled feed is considered to be more reliable, particularly in a manually operated firearm, because it makes it much less prone to inducing a double feed, for example, and some other types of malfunctions.
There you go. And it's also not reliant on gravity, right? In other words,
yeah. So with a control feed system, because the top round that's in the feedway is always being held on to by the extractor, you can operate the rifle at any sort of weird angle. You could turn it upside down, whatever. I don't know why you would, but this was important for bolt action military rifles because they would often be used in adverse situations, which is, I guess, the euphemism of the century for being shot at. And also, I can see that would be useful for a hunting rifle, although I don't personally hunt. I would imagine that if you're out in the brush trying to make yourself as concealed as possible from whatever type of game animal you're hunting, you might get some sort of weird angle. You might be lying on your side or whatever. The rifle might be on its side, and with a push feed, the top round might just fall out the top of the receiver. With a controlled feed, there's no risk of that happening.
Well, and I was thinking about if you want to go hunting in space and there's no gravity. Like next time Katy Perry goes up, and she's an astronaut now, so next time she goes up and she wants to do a little shooting with her Model 70, I think it'll probably be better for her too. By the way, you got the question absolutely right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Model 70. Go ahead.
Something else to point out that
Sure.
Is not recognized as much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Something else to point out about the difference between controlled feed and push feed is that a controlled feed rifle is a little bit better if you're a reloader. And the reason for that is because with a controlled feed system, the extractor will generally be fixed and there will be a notch in the bolt face so that when you pull the bolt back far enough, the fixed extractor, like what people call the shark fin in an AK receiver, will knock it out just relying on the force generated when you ram the bolt back. Whereas with a push feed rifle, you'll have a plunger style ejector in the bolt face, so that as soon as the vent casing coming out of the chamber has enough space to be pushed out by that spring-loaded plunger, it will fly out under spring pressure. So if you have a controlled feed rifle and you want to save your spent casings to reload them, especially if it's some kind of weird, rare type of round, then you can just work the bolt very, very slowly, and the spent casing will pop out with very little force because you're not imparting much force to the bolt, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense. It's also one thing that doesn't get talked about a lot is it's quieter.
Yeah.
It's quieter, which doesn't sound like a big deal. But
When you're hunting, it is.
When you're hunting, if you're a sniper, you know what I mean? If you're, especially if you're hunting, you don't, maybe you're, stalking without having one in the chamber or whatever, and you finally, find a shot and you're looking to, rack around in, and last thing you want to happen is for you to have some unnecessary noise. But, okay, Model 70, the Model 70, first off, is a classic rifle. What's its nickname? The Rifleman's Rifle, I think, is what it's called, or something like that.
That's a Sam question.
Yeah. Sam, is it a Model 70 called the Rifleman's Rifle or something like that?
I haven't heard that before, but that's not to say it isn't true.
So the Model 70 pre-1964 and post-1964 variants, the pre-1964, the original Model 70, introduced in 1936, featured a controlled round feed, or CRF, just like you said, with a Mauser-style claw extractor, also just like you said. This design grabs the cartridge rim as it's fed from the magazine and holds it securely through the entire cycle, enhancing reliability, especially in adverse conditions or with high-pressure rounds. Post-1964, Winchester redesigned the Model 70 to cut costs. Never a good idea. Introducing a push feed action in many variants. In this system, the bolt pushes the cartridge into the chamber without gripping the rim until chambering, which is less reliable for extraction under certain conditions, for example, a sticky case. The push feed design also used a smaller, less robust extractor and a plunger-style ejector, which were cheaper to produce and less reliable. So in the 1990s, they went back to the claw extractor. It was actually the early 1990s, and now, and they refer to those as Model 70 Classics. So just like you said, so if the extractor is designed like it was pre-64, then it's called a Model 70 Classic. When I was looking this up, I think they're all, if you buy a Model 70 today, I think they're all classics. I think they all have the claw extractor. They're all the way they used to be. I don't think any of them use the push feed action at all.
I'm sure you
anymore.
can find some used ones if you want to
buy
find
some used one,
classic,
yeah. But if you're buying a new one
Right.
off the shelf since the 90s, it looks like all Model 70s
Correct.
are classics.
I like to update, by the way. It is the Rifleman's Rifle. You were correct.
The Rifleman's
That's it.
Rifle. There you go.
Yeah.
I seriously, I think that's on the to-do list, the Model 70. It's been on my to-do list for like 20 years, though, so maybe don't take me seriously. Okay, if you're smart enough to stump Sam, send us a question. Go to gunownersradio.com, submit your stumper, and let's see if we can stump my nephew. Cool, man. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. You did a great job. You nailed it. Hey, didn't we give you some homework to do last week? Were you able to find anything out?
You did give me homework. For those of you who weren't tuned in, the question was as to what manufacturer had produced the most shotguns. And the answer that the person who wrote in provided talked about annual production figures. So the answer was to, more specifically, the question of what manufacturer produces the most shotguns currently as a proportion of the market. And so what I did is immediately after I logged off from the show is I emailed both Mossberg and Remington because the answer that I had thought was, well, I thought Remington had made the most shotguns total, but the answer provided was about annual shotgun production numbers and cited Mossberg as the winner, which absolutely makes sense to me. and some hard numbers were provided to back that up. So I heard back. I did not hear back from Remington, but I did hear back from Mossberg. And Mossberg actually does not have numbers, at least that the people I was able to reach had access to, about how many shotguns total Mossberg has ever produced. They do have a list of the number of models they have produced of all firearms, but not a total production number in terms of millions, say 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, whatever. So I don't know if the answer to that question is even out there, and if it is, how to find it. And I haven't heard from Remington, which is not super surprising.
So inconclusive. Still, I was pretty impressed. I didn't realize just how many shotguns total that Mossberg had produced and was producing. It's pretty amazing how they're really pumping it out there.
Yeah, Mossberg makes a crap ton of guns, that being the technical term. And the Mossberg 500 platform and its derivatives, so the Maverick 88, the 590, 590A1, their receiver design is conducive theoretically to lower production costs. Now, I don't know what the relative production costs are between Mossberg and that's obviously extremely proprietary information and relies on labor costs and material costs and those sorts of things. But the Remington 870 platform uses a different sort of locking system. The bolt locks into the top of the receiver. It's like a tilting bolt with a locking shoulder, which requires a strong steel receiver, whereas the Mossberg is a little bit more, I guess you could say, AR-15 adjacent, in that it's able to use an aluminum receiver, which should be lighter and cheaper to produce, because the bolt is actually locking into a barrel extension, kind of like on an AR-15. I haven't broken down shotguns as much as rifles, but that I might be using slightly inaccurate terminology, because I know shotgun terminology can be a little bit different. But basically, the receiver seems like it should be cheaper to produce, and the barrel doesn't seem like it would be a whole huge amount of difference there.
There you go. Good information, a wealth of knowledge as always.
I wasn't here last week, but I was just as Sam was answering and talking, I was just thinking, I'm like, Remington's been around a lot longer, so that's kind of a tough question. You think?
Yeah.
I think Mossberg is definitely, at least what I'm seeing, selling more quantity wise. I mean, Remington's had some issues with the finishes on their guns and some things lately in quality control. But Remington's been around longer. So
they've been around longer. We were talking about, has Remington been around longer than Mossberg?
Well, I just looked it up. According to what I found, Remington was 1816 and Mossberg was 1919.
Okay.
So near almost 100 years apart at the beginning.
The one thing we were talking about is
shotgun production, at least.
The Mossberg has the breadth. In other words, they have more models of shotguns going out, where Remington, I don't think, has quite as many, or at least isn't known for as many.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so,
they don't do as
it
much
is an interesting question. What's that?
And they don't do as much volume anymore. I have written blog posts about this earlier this year, actually, about Remington going in and out of bankruptcy. But as for the question last week, he got me good on that one. I think I just misunderstood the exact wording of the question. So I was trying to answer a little bit of a different question from what he was really asking. But it was a good one, and he had some really good information in the answer, good numbers about percentages of the annual shotgun market there.
Good. Cool, man. Thanks as always. Great job. And we'll talk to you next week, Sam. Very good.
Well, thanks for having me on. As always, I always enjoy it. And thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
All right, bud. See ya. Gun Owners Radio's membership program, the Pew Pew Crew. We offer all kinds of free content. Every day we're putting up new videos with information so that you know what's going on in the Second Amendment community. None of that's going away. We're adding an additional benefit for members of the Pew Pew Crew. Welcome and thank you so much to the founding members. And here's what you get if you become a member of the Pew Pew Crew. You get behind-the-scenes content, members-only content, and exclusive perks. What does your membership do? Well, it helps us grow the show. It helps us grow the movement, the Second Amendment movement, so that we can be more effective. And it helps fight to restore and defend your Second Amendment rights. So we have a Pew Pew Crew perk alert. If you're a new gun owner, you join the Pew Pew crew, and this is your shot to learn from a real special operations instructor. Join the Pew Pew crew on YouTube, our YouTube channel, and you could win a private lesson with Matt Hoff from West Coast Kinetic Solutions. We'll announce the winner the next episode, so get in now. Visit our YouTube channel and look for the join button and become a member of the Pew Pew crew. So, Gun Owners Radio, we really want to be a resource for you. We want to point out some of the resources that you have at your fingertips. So, we want to start with San Diego County Gun Owners website. You can access the website by going to sdcgo.org. That's sdcgo.org. I wanted to take you on a little tour here and show you all the things on our website. I actually get a lot of questions throughout the week that you can easily find on our website. So we just wanted to take a couple of minutes and show you all the amazing things we have. First, we want to start with the About Us section. And the reason I wanted to show you the About Us section is it actually has San Diego County Gun Owners' mission statement. And that mission statement hasn't changed since we wrote it in 2015. It talks about exactly what we're doing and who we do it for and how we get it accomplished. Check that out. Check out that mission statement so that you really get a feel for exactly what San Diego County Gun Owners is designed to do and how we do it. There's also down at the bottom of the page, you'll see all the board members. That's the San Diego County Gun Owners leadership. You can see who is helping to make the decisions when it comes to endorsements and that sort of thing. The next thing is a really, truly good tool is if you go to the City Council ratings section of our website. City Council ratings. So we focus, San Diego County Gun Owners focuses on local elections. There are a lot of great organizations that show you who to vote for when it comes to state and federal. But what we found is there really wasn't a lot of good information on these local boards and councils, city council, school board, that sort of thing. So what we wanted to do is we want to do a couple things. First off, if you look at that first button there, the pledge, that's a pledge that we get elected officials to sign. That it's basically saying, hey, look, if something firearms related comes up on our council or board, we pledge to at least sit down and talk to you about it first. That way they can't vote on something the wrong way and then come back and say, oh, gee, golly gosh, we just didn't know. The other thing is our questionnaire. Before we endorse anybody, we make them fill out a questionnaire. And our questionnaire, check it out. It's actually fairly unique in that we ask them to commit to action. So we present a question to them, and then we ask them, hey, do you support us on this? Will you actually stand up and fight for this? Or if you don't support us, will you work against us? And that's our questionnaire. But the real meat of this thing, the real tool is the thumbs up, thumbs down section, where we have county officials like the sheriff and the county board of supervisors. And then we have every city in the county listed, all of their city council members on their city council listed with a quick and simple thumbs up or thumbs down or undecided. So have they voted against you in the past? Well, that's going to result in a thumbs down. Have they supported you in the past? That's going to result in a thumbs up. But what if they haven't really made any statements at all and they really haven't done anything for us or against us? Well, then we're going to put them in the undecided section. There are 18 city councils in the county, and all of them have at least 5 board members, except the city of San Diego has more. And this way you can look at your city and your city council members and know exactly where they stand. Extremely valuable tool. Check it out. If you now go to the events calendar, we have an events calendar on our website. We make sure to bring activists together, bring people who are passionate about the Second Amendment together for all kinds of cool and different events. If you want to know what's going on this week, next month, check out our events calendar. There's always something coming up. There's always something going on. There's an opportunity for you to meet other people, to get involved, to do meaningful work as far as an activist, just meet other people in the community, get educated. There's all kinds of really cool things that we put on our events calendar. So check that out. This is something I get questions about a lot. We have a CCW resource page This was especially helpful back when you had to have good cause, which of course you no longer have to have a good cause statement on your CCW application, but there's still a lot of things that you need to know. And our CCW resource page talks about where to apply. It links you to a video that walks you through applying. It has a bunch of cool articles as far as carrying, the daily carry lifestyle. And then we even have a chart showing where you can and can't carry, which unfortunately in today's political environment is extremely important. So what you want to do is you want to go to sdcgo.org/CCW and you can check out our CCW resource page. It'll help you reapply. It'll help you apply. If you have a friend that needs help, go to our CCW resource page. Our legal protection page, if you've decided that you're going to carry or you're going to own a firearm for self-defense, then you've also decided that there may be a very real time in your life that you're going to need some kind of legal defense. If you're involved in a defensive gun use where you've saved your life, you've saved the life of your family, you're most likely going to have an attorney in your corner. Now, there are a lot of services that provide legal protection, and we wanted to stay agnostic on it, and we wanted to ask them all the same questions and put them side to side and really, really figure out, okay, which one's right for you. So if you go to our legal protection page, you can see, 5 different organizations that provide some kind of legal protection for gun owners, and you can see questions that are most commonly asked by people who are interested in these services, and make a decision for yourself. Figure out which one is right for you. The next page we have is the lawsuits page. We're very, very proud that we have partnered with the Firearms Policy Coalition on a number of lawsuits where we are plaintiffs. If you're not sure what's going on in these lawsuits, if you want to know more about the lawsuits that are happening to protect and restore your Second Amendment rights, check out our lawsuits page. We also even have on the lawsuits page, we have a legal terms in plain terms guide. So you hear a lot of lingo when you're learning about lawsuits, and we put together a guide that will help you understand and decipher that lingo. So you can check that out. What is an en banc? What is a summary judgment? What does it mean when they say they have a stay or an injunction? We put together a guide for you to make it easy. But the main part of the page is to show you the different lawsuits where we are plaintiffs. What's going on with the assault weapons ban lawsuit, the Miller case? What's going on with the roster case? What's going on with the case for gun ownership for 18, 19, and 20-year-olds? Well, it's all right here. You can see the lawsuit, and it'll break it down for you and tell you exactly what's going on and where. Now, this next web page on our website is for everybody because everybody needs to volunteer and get involved. We make activism easy, and if you go to our volunteer page on our website, you're going to see a whole calendar of events. You can give people a first-time shooting experience at one of our organized shooting socials. You can man a tabletop at one of our gun shop tabletop pages. All kinds of different opportunities, all kinds of different events. We make it easy for you to get involved. So maybe once a week, get into the habit of going to our volunteer page and just see, is there something that you want to do to help? Is there a date and time that works well for your calendar? All kinds of different resources on our website. I wanted to make sure that you saw that our website isn't just an advertisement for people to join and become a member, but it's also a tool full of resources that you can use to get more involved and be better educated when it comes to your Second Amendment and the Second Amendment fight, especially here in California. So that's it. That's your website tour for San Diego County gun owners. Actually, a very similar website for Orange County gun owners and a very similar website for Inland Empire gun owners. Check them out today. Hey, so we wanted to tell you about somebody very special, West Coast Kinetic Solutions. Looking to level up your firearms training? West Coast Kinetic Solutions offers expert instruction from Marine and Navy Special Ops veterans right here in San Diego. Whether you're working on your CCW or you want to train in real-world tactics, they've got a course for you. Their founding member program is all about making high-quality training more accessible with perks like free classes, private coaching, and CCW discounts. Check them out at westcoastkineticsolution.com and train like your life depends on it. So I wanted to do something a little different. This is election related, and I think it's a really good time to do that now before we get, really neck deep into election season. A lot of people look at the electorate all wrong. They don't really understand who votes, why they vote, what the voting pool really looks like. So I wanted to use a real high-tech version or a real high-tech way to show you a little bit more clearly about, what exactly a voter is and where they're coming from. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go right to the whiteboard here. And I want to show you, okay, so let's imagine that this whiteboard represents every U.S. citizen who is 18 or older, right? You can't vote until you're 18. Now, within that pool of people, you're going to have people that are actually registered to vote. So everybody outside of this circle is an adult who's 18 or over. Everybody inside of this circle is somebody who is actually they're actually going to vote. They're actually, part of the people that are going to vote. There's a significant portion of people outside of this that aren't going to vote. So let's say you are talking to a politician and they go, gee, golly gosh, I don't know if I want to talk about the Second Amendment. I'm afraid it's going to turn voters off. I'm afraid that there are people out there who will not vote for me once they find out that I like the Second Amendment. That doesn't really exist. That person doesn't exactly exist because they are talking about the electorate or voters as if it's this entire whiteboard and it's not just this circle of voters. Now let's talk about what makes up this circle of voters. Well, the circle of voters are all different kinds of voters. There's some subject, everybody cares about multiple subjects. Everybody cares a little bit about whatever, taxes and immigration, or whatever the political issue du jour is. Everybody cares a little bit about it. But at the end of the day, there's one thing that gets somebody to vote for a candidate. There's one litmus test. You know what I mean? There's one issue. Maybe it's just the fact that they're a Republican or just the fact that they're a Democrat. Or maybe you're willing to overlook these 2 or 3 things that you disagree with a candidate on, but there's this one issue that you're just not willing to overlook, And sometimes it's a couple of things and then boom, it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. But the reality is that within this circle, there are a bunch of different subcircles. So let's say, let's make another circle here. Let's say that this circle, the green circle, are people that vote just on environmental issues, right? They're green voters. Now, why is that circle outside? Why is it overlapping the total circle? Because there are a number of green voters who just don't vote, So this section of voters represents just people that vote on environmental issues, right? And then you got another circle over here. These are people who just vote on LGBT issues, right? And again, you're going to have a whole section of LGBT voters that don't vote. They're outside of the circle. They might not even be registered. They don't show up to the polls or anything like that. And maybe you have another circle over here. These are pro-business, right? Their whole issue is taxes and how pro-business a section or an area is, right? And then over here you have, let's say these are the pro-Second Amendment voters, right? And again, even in the pro-Second Amendment community, we have a number of people that quite simply don't vote, okay? And then maybe you got another section over here. Maybe this is the immigration folks, right? So you have all these different sections of people. again, outside of the big black circle are people who could vote. They're over the age of 18, they could register and vote. Or maybe they're over the age of 18 and can't vote because they're a felon or something like that. They've lost their right to vote. But they're American citizens. And then inside the black circle are people that actually vote. So what do? You're pro Second Amendment. You're trying to get people to vote for your candidate. You're trying to get them to show up to the poll. What do? Well, if you talk to candidates, they're going to tell you that, hey, I'm worried that somebody who normally would vote for me won't vote for me because they found out that I'm pro Second Amendment. And again, that person simply just doesn't exist. If that's their one thing that they're going to vote for, that's the straw, right, that broke the camel's back, they've already done the research. They're already going to ask the question, and if you say to them, well, I don't really care about the Second Amendment issues, I'm here to fill potholes or something like that, you're not going to get their vote. So the strategy really is, what you want to try to do is make this black circle even bigger than it already is. So the big advantage, if you do talk to a candidate and say, hey, here's how I feel about the Second Amendment, we want to try to get your vote so that other people can vote for you. What you're actually doing is you're getting this black circle to be even bigger, right? So you're taking this black circle and you're expanding it so that people who normally wouldn't vote for a candidate because maybe they're, disenfranchised, they don't think that anybody stands for their Second Amendment rights, but because you're talking about the Second Amendment with this candidate, because you're pointing out that this candidate cares about your Second Amendment rights, then you're actually increasing the size of the number of people who vote. Okay, does that make sense? I hope it does. So all these folks are doing the same thing. All these different groups are doing the same thing. And the reality is there's probably 1,000 of these circles. I'm just giving a couple of different examples. And if it's, say, an off-election season, that black big circle might be smaller, if people don't really care about what's going on at the time, if there's not some big hot issue, that circle might be much, much smaller. If there's some kind of big issue happening, then that circle might get bigger. But the point is, it's never 100%. It's never 100% of the people who are over 18 who show up and vote. Now, that's an important issue because a lot of people look at it like, this message, applies to every single person, or every single person's the same. Or it's every single person, it's really just 50-50. Half believe in this, half don't believe in that. When that's just not the case. It's really much more of a bunch of circles within a circle. And if I wanted to be really accurate, what it would end up being is, like, for example, this green circle might overlap somewhat to these other circles, because like I said, everybody's got a little, believes in multiple things. But the reality is what we're really trying to do here. So what you're attempting to do is, if you talk to this guy in the purple circle and you tell him how important your blue circle is, he's never going to care because he's in the purple circle. What you want to try to do is expand your blue circle so that more of it fits inside the black circle. So you want to go find people who wouldn't vote, but because you're introducing them to a pro-Second Amendment candidate, they now become a voter. You're educating and motivating somebody to become a voter. You want to make the pie bigger. You're not fighting with the green or the pink or the red or the purple for a bigger slice of the same pie, and you're not dealing with 100% of the voters out there. You're actually dealing with people who are motivated by the Second Amendment and could be motivated to show up and vote if you just give them a reason. Ideally, we'd like to grow this blue circle so it's even bigger. So an even bigger percentage of voters out there care about the Second Amendment. And that's what off years are for. When there's no election going on, we're going to go out and gather people, sign them up to become members, add them to email lists, get them to a range and show them how to shoot, show them the importance of self-defense and the Second Amendment. And you want to make that blue circle even bigger And then on election years, you want to move this big blue circle, this big blue Second Amendment circle, you want to move even more of it into the black circle so that they show up and vote, and then, of course, vote for the right person. So I think that that better illustrates what we're trying to accomplish in election years and off election years, you know, with the organization, our outreach programs, and then how you talk to potential voters, you know, and what we're actually trying to accomplish. Off years, we're trying to expand this blue circle. Then election years, we're trying to get more of this blue circle into the black circle. So that's the electorate. That's really what's going on. That's what we're attempting to do when it comes to elections. I hope that makes a lot more sense. That is our show. Thank you so much for listening. Share, tell all your friends. Thank you so much, Alicia. Excellent job. Thank you, Sam. Awesome job, everybody. Listen to us next week. Tell everybody about us. Don't keep us a secret. And get out there and get active, man. You know, do something that you'll be proud of to say that you did to support and preserve and restore the Second Amendment in California. See you guys next week.